Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode, we welcome David Dastmalchian and Leah Kilpatrick to the episode to talk their short story in the Headless Horseman Annual #1 shot over at Dark Horse Comics called Horror House. David is an actor, writer, producer, all those things, who's appeared in movies like The Dark Knight, Prisoners, the Ant-Man trilogy, The Belko Experiment, Blade Runner 2049, Bird Box, The Suicide Squad, Dune, The Boogeyman, Oppenheimer, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, Gotham, Flash, and so many more. He also has an independent film coming up that's hoping to be on screens at some point in 2024 called Late Night with the Devil. However, he's here to talk about comics that he co-wrote with Leah Kilpatrick, as well as comics like Count Crowley over at Dark Horse Comics. Leah is an actress, comedian, and host. She's been in things like Lovers Divided, Sunny Family Cult, Babysplitters, Free the Nipple, Gateway, and more. She also hosts Super-Fan Bulds on Netflix. She co-wrote this story with David over at Dark Horse Comics. So enjoy this episode, everybody. But before you do, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, as well as subscribe, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, and all your major podcasting platforms. This is an episode with David Dastmalchian and Leah Kilpatrick talking the Headless Horseman Annual #1 at Dark Horse Comics. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, David and Leah. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm here in Maine. You guys in California?
Yes, we're in California, and it is the beginning of October now. So for us, it's very exciting. We are jointly throwing a really big Halloween party together this year. So yesterday we were like going through all the crazy decorations and getting ready for that, costume preparation, makeup preparation. It's a very exciting time of year. Yes. We've got horror comics. What a life.
It's so much fun. October is amazing in my opinion. Here in Maine, we get leaves changing too. So there's that.
We have to put fake leaves in our yard.
We just paint, we just graffiti the real trees. I love Maine. We'll be not too far from you. We're going to be in Connecticut next weekend doing some book signings. This weekend. Holy crap. Oh my God, time is flying.
You're not busy at all, are you? It's one of those things I always love and say thank you to the people who jump on the podcast, because like their lives are way more busy than mine are, and it's just so thankful for you guys to be on here. So I guess let's talk a little bit about who you are and how you got into this, writing a comic book. So Leah, are you a comic book fan as well? I don't know much about you, so let's talk a little bit about who you are.
So I'm originally from Minnesota, and I grew up with really all sorts of nerddoms. My main ones were, even into high school, I would go over to like sleepovers with girlfriends, and I would be the one waking up at 7 a.m. to watch Saturday morning cartoons, like well until I was like 17, 18, which people always thought was questionable, but I knew got good content when I saw it. Comic books were always kind of there in my life. I think it wasn't until later in life that I really hit them hard. I steered a bit away from reading just because it was a bit of not my strong suit. Mm-hmm. So what I appreciated with comics was the artistry and just being able to, even if I had moments where the writing was too much for me, which sounds silly looking at comic book writing, but I would be able to see a story, fall in love with it just by the imagery alone. So that was always kind of a big inspiration for a lot of my creativity in later life, was visuals and tangible medium. That's why I was so excited when we wrote this comic together, because I haven't had something published that I could physically touch. So that was a huge victory for me, that I have David to thank.
Yourself to thank.
And so, like, obviously, is this like, obviously, David, you've written a few comics now. And so have you been a comic book fan your entire life too? Or has this been something?
I have. I've been collecting. First comic I got in 3rd grade was, where is she? Well, she's around here somewhere. There she is. Avengers number 249. They were facing Demon Storm, and I kept that. I got it off of a spinner rack at a minute shop, and I never got rid of that. And I'm very kind of methodical about how I bag and board stuff, and I have been since I was a kid. Yes. In fact, I'm reorganizing my my boxes as we speak. But yeah. And I got really turned on to the world of horror and horror comics as well at a pretty young age, which was something I really loved. And I think for me, I liked reading a lot, but I did struggle with, I guess, I don't know. They were for me like comics, comic shops, comic culture were always this just like amazing place where I could escape in my imagination and get lost in characters and ideas and worlds that felt as filled as they were with like menacing villains and potentially galaxy ending catastrophes. It still felt a lot safer sometimes than the world I was living in. And so it's been really a gift for me. Obviously, in the world of acting, I've had the benefit of getting to work in a number of cool comic book properties, and I'm so in love with the way that comic books have been adapted to film and television since I was a kid, since the Saturday morning cartoons. I used to love Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and I loved the Justice League. I loved watching Super Friends and was addicted to all the Hall of Justice. But I was more into actually, I felt like the villains and the Rogues Gallery on like Justice League were the best, man. They were my favorite. And then, so yeah, getting the opportunity to write and create comics now, it's like, it's wild, man. It's such a surreal reality for me.
I love how you mentioned organizing comics and things like that. Like I wrote a piece about, I want to say 2 years ago now, about the idea that it's like a mental break for me just to like organize comics and go to the comic book store. And like the idea of collecting comics and reading comics is this broader thing than just physically turning the pages in a book. It's the bagging and boarding, it's the organization, it's the displaying them and all that stuff. So I'm glad you're somewhat in the same boat as me in that sense.
Yeah, no, it's a whole thing. And I think for people who don't collect comics, it can be intimidating, and I'm trying to encourage, and it's been cool seeing the boom of what, the MCU and the DCU and other independents have done with like film and television, because I see a lot of younger people going in, and it's like, just go buy that comic, it's like a really cost effective, affordable form of entertainment. It's a great thing for parents to do with kids. It's a great thing for grown-ups to do who've never been to a comic shop in their life. I know it can seem intimidating, but it's like, you don't need to know the best writers, the best artists. You should walk into a shop, walk along that wall, and just pick up the first thing that really like you can't take your eyes off of. I still do that to this day. Like I have my favorite things that I follow, but I love to just walk along a wall on a Wednesday and see something new with an artist, that does something that I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome.
Yes, it's a fun experience going into comic book stores, that's for sure. But I mean, not only is comics this big thing, and obviously we focus a lot on comics on this podcast, but we also love the horror genre. So like, obviously we're in October now, and this is a fun month for a lot of us horror fans. I don't know why it has to be in 1 month. Really, we can be horror fans all year long. But Leah, have you been a horror fan since you were young? Is this something that you've always been attracted to?
Yeah, horror and gore has always been something that I lean towards. It was always, I think my mom always thought I was just like a little weirdo, because any type of violent, scary movie like Freddy Krueger was, while I had this interesting relationship with him where I was terrified, I was constantly obsessed. And I think that's where I found myself a lot of times with horror things, was the fear made me like them more, which I'm talking in therapy about. But with all the classic monsters, Creature from the Black Lagoon is still today one of my favorites. I just have this fascination over Creature. And then when I got to LA, it was fun because I got to like act in little, I got to act in this Friday the 13th music video. And I got Jason to kill me with, what are those called?
Like garden trimmers, hedge trimmers, yeah.
It was a replica from Friday the 13th, The New Beginning. Okay. So I got to play the dead chick. That's awesome. It was awesome. So it was like something that I've been such a fan of for so long, to then be able to live in it was such a dream. But horror stuff has always, my dad would always, I hated it, but he would always play little videos to torment me with it, and it's a whole genre that I've always just been obsessed with.
It's a great means of disciplining children. I do that myself. When my kids are bad, I'm like, that clown down in the crawl space.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, we have that as a regular thing. I live in Bangor, Maine, which is the home of Stephen King, and so we have that as a normal. Like it doesn't scare as many people here because like, yeah, I know that guy lives on the West Broadway. I know where he lives. It's not like
right.
But
have you ever run into him around town?
Yeah, here and there. He lives nowadays mostly in Florida, but he does come up here and there, and people stop by his house to take photos of his house because it's creepy, and he's got like gargoyles out there and like bats on the fences and all that stuff. And a lot of his books he did write in this place. So it is, if you're a big Stephen King fan or horror fan, it's nice to see this place. But really he's not up in this area as much anymore. He spends a lot of time in Florida and at Red Sox games and things like that.
But
he's turning his house into a writer's retreat though. He's turning it into a place where horror writers
can that's go. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, he's definitely one of my biggest inspirations. He's such a hero, and what an incredible guy. That's how Leah and I actually met, was through like horror, sci-fi. She had come out of a film school in Chicago, Columbia, and I had graduated. I had been graduated for a long time, but I had started my theater career in Chicago, and then was doing some cinema and short films. And she produced a short film that's like a sci-fi horror film called Gateway, and that's when we met. That's when we became friends, which would have been back in 2010. 2010. So 13 years we've been in some capacity working together and known each other for like 14 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think your viewers would appreciate, you gotta like her, speaking of gore and makeup and stuff, her Instagram and YouTube, you gotta link it on here, like the makeups she does, because she's not a makeup artist, but she does it for fun. Like her Vision makeup was amazing, but the zombie Captain America is one of the coolest. Like I show it to all my professional makeup friends, and they're like, "Who the F is this? This is incredible." It's so impressive. Yeah. It's really kind of,
you have it pinned, I think, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a clicker mask. That was like the thing though, is when you said earlier, it was like, why does Halloween have to be 1 month? It was so funny to me because every Halloween I would build up to getting excited about what my costume was and what I could create and how I could be different and how I could make it. And then last year I was like, why am I limiting it to... And then people are like, yeah, that's what cosplayers do. I was like, yeah, okay. But like, I don't want to put myself in that category because they're so talented. You know what I mean? They're like so multi-talented and making so many things.
It's crazy. Anybody who sees what you've done would be like, that would win prize. You'd win trophies at cons. For sure with some of those looks.
But that was like the thing that I forgot for a period of time, was you can celebrate these things all year round in different ways. And even just being creative. Like with the clicker mask I made, that was like in, I don't know, April. So
they're so awesome. It's so awesome.
They are. I second that opinion on going to your Instagram and looking at everything, because it is all wonderful. It is. It's one of those things that if you're like trying to get to know someone, you're like, so you're just a makeup person. Like that's what you'd get. Like a lot of you tell jokes and you. Yeah, you do makeup. That's who you are.
It's very confusing. I know, but too many things. I gotta put one down.
That's why I knew when the prospect. So we were talking about, we should work, or at least I was thinking I wanted to work on stuff with Leah. I don't know if she felt that way, but I was certainly like, I'd love to work on stuff because I've been following her creations for years. In comedy, especially, like she's just done a lot of really funny sketch work over the years that I've liked. And I thought when Megan Walker, who is the editor at Dark Horse, who has helped shepherd Count Crowley for me over the last 5 years, is also a really amazing friend and artistic collaborator for me. When she told me that she was doing this anthology special for Halloween, and she wanted to start doing this like an annual for Dark Horse called the Headless Horseman, and would I be interested in coming up with a short piece for it? I immediately thought of Leah, because I've been in a space lately with a lot of my horror writing where I'm trying to incorporate the gallows humor and the the tone of things that I love, but that I don't necessarily have the skill set for. So I was like, would you be interested in helping me collaborate on creating something? And she was like, for $5 million. Yeah.
Yeah, how much are you gonna pay me now?
Of course. But that was like the challenging part, because I had written scripts and TV pilots before, so then changing your creative brain to writing a comic is different. And so I was able to learn so much from David, who had so much experience already with it. And that was such a cool thing, just to learn about creatively how you handle panels and how you can, the different ways you can use text and the page flip. And he taught me all that stuff, which I think is such another added layer that maybe people who read comics don't think about. They experience it, but then when you write for it, I think it's such a tool that creators can use to pull people in even more to their story.
I didn't think about it, and I was consuming comic books for decades, and I never really got into the and then you read like Bendis gave some great there's tons of great writers who've created like texts for you to learn how to write comics, but I would say like just having to dive in and tying in, wouldn't you say that like there is a connectivity between script writing, comic? I mean, there's something. Course, yeah. I'm glad we have that like language. We've spent years developing like how to write screenplays, but bringing that visual medium into then a way that you can basically be sharing a bunch of emotional tonal ideas with your artist, who for us is 3 states away, and we never see in person. It's all done through us sending ideas as words on a script, and then to see what the artist can do, and then to have the gift of somebody as talented as Tyler was like, God, yeah. what an amazing kick-ass way to kick this thing off together, right?
Was that something that Dark Horse connected you two together, or how'd the connection with Tyler come about?
A couple of years ago, in the midst of the pandemic, there was, as we know, so much like social and political upheaval, and all the different workspaces I think people were involved in were just feeling these shifts away from what could feel to many people like, oh, it's just the way this is, as opposed to the people who were suffering under that. And I think the comic space has been going through a lot of transitions in the last 5 years, where people are recognizing that like everything from power structures to toxic work environments to the way relationships can happen between, like, just like in Hollywood, just like in corporate America, it's just like in Washington, very powerful people who could just kind of do what they will, and if they generate enough coin, kind of live. So Tyler and I had heard enough stories from people, in particular women, who were being like treated in ways that we were like, this is just not cool. And so we banded together with a group of other artists and writers and creators to say, like, we, stand in unity with needing to make a change. The way that HR companies, HR operates in the space is really important. And so he and I started talking on the phone a lot. I was already a massive fan of his artwork. I fell in love with him as a person through that process of just talking about, what can we do? We're comic book creators, or I'm an actor. Like, how do we have any impact on this totally crazy world that we're living in? And I just admire him so much. And so then when Megan approached about this, Megan and Leah and I and my wife Eve, we all went out for breakfast, and it was a great, like, hit it off conversation. She was like, what artist do you want? And I was like, oh my God. Like, so I was thinking, we were talking and looking. And there was one artist who we really love, who we thought was going to be able to do it. And then he couldn't with schedule. And I was like, he's never going to say yes, but I should ask. At least I should shoot for the moon. You got to shoot for the moon. I was like, I'll ask Tyler Crook. And then if he says no, which he will, then we'll have Megan maybe help us figure somebody that she knows. And he said yes. Not at first. He was like, I need to read it. And then he was like, let me see how my schedule is. Yeah. And then it just started to go. And it was awesome because he's very hands-on, So
Yeah,
we had
he
a
was
lot
wonderful.
yeah.
And the art in this whole Headless Horseman Annual #1 is great throughout the entire thing, the different styles. But like literally, I was reading, so Caitlin over at Dark Horse sent me a copy in digital, and I was reading it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get to their story here pretty soon. And it changed the page, and I was like, I really hope this is their story.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those weird things is it didn't have like a splash page, like your name of your story was technically on the building. So like it's one of those things that I got to it. I'm like, I really hope this is it, and I got to like flip back on the PDF to the front. I'm like, yes, it is it. And so because the artwork in that page was so amazing. It's like, I love Count Crowley, and I love obviously the stuff that David you do on screen. And so I was excited to read this book as a story as it was. And then I was like, looking at your Instagram, Leah, and stuff like that. Like, okay, this person's funny, so I'm hoping this person has some input on it. It makes this a little funny, and it was unbelievable. And I don't want to give away too much about it. I think people need to read the story, but it's not your typical haunted house for sure. I'll say that. The only line I want to say is hipster tennis. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go any further than that.
Had to make it in.
Yes.
I literally I read books at night with my iPad. My wife sleeps, and I'm like, I have a little mount that I read it with, and I'm reading it. I literally laughed out loud. She's like, "You okay?" And then the one line of the entire story that stuck with me was that one line, hipster tennis. But no, it's not your typical haunted house. How did this story come about? Like, how did this form? How did this, did you guys go back and forth on this? Was this an idea for a long
lot
time,
and we were working in the same space, which was cool. We were sitting up here in my office talking.
Yeah, and we were just kind of trying to think of what we're interested in Halloween, and we see it so much from our point of view as humans. We were like, what do the monsters do on Halloween? Which isn't necessarily an original thought, but we were interested in putting our spin on it. And what do teen monsters do? What do they think scary? What do they see and pretend that they're not afraid of because they're too cool? And we were just kind of dabbling in the fact of, I think after the pandemic, I think a lot of people came out being like, are we good people? What's our priorities?
Yeah.
What are we? And we just kind of wanted to have a little hint of who maybe really is the real monsters in these worlds and how we can play into that.
Absolutely. I get asked lately more and more to do, because of my acting business, be a talking head kind of thing on these different horror. We're going to talk about horror movies. We're going to talk about horror fiction. We're going to talk about whatever. But we do panels now as comic creators. We were at San Diego Comic-Con, and we're getting ready to do New York Comic-Con. So anybody who's watching, come and see us at New York. And we're also going to be at the famous Monsters of Filmland Festival in October. A lot of opportunities to talk about horror. What does horror mean to you? What are monsters? And I always quote her because I think she's a genius, but Emile Ferris talks a lot about good monsters and bad monsters. And I think that that in my now intellectual analysis and thoughtfulness on what are monsters, I always land on the side of I'm the most scared of just people. And I think the metaphorical or creative, mythological, modern or classical mythological ways that we manifest monsters in our storytelling are meant to take those things to the extreme, but it's still the thing that scares me the most. So I was like, we could make this really dour and dark, or with the help of my amazing writing partner, I feel like we could find some way in this that makes it more fun and fluid. And that experience of going to a haunted house. I'm sure you have them in Maine. We have them in California. We just did horror nights together the other night. I love haunted houses. That experience, I wanted our readers to get to have turning the page, what's the next room? What's the next horror we're going to see?
And it just increases from that point on. It's so great because I love it's a short story too. That's the point too. I feel like it would be drawn out almost in a full-length comic book where you get okay, I get it. Let's go. It's, this being a short story in an anthology actually works really perfectly for it. But I like how your point about the monsters being people, because I've always tried to explain that to people, with The Last of Us, for an example, or The Walking Dead and all these things. And people are like, I'm not into zombies. I'm like, it's not really about the zombies. It's a vessel to get the story moving, but it's really about the people and how the people are really the scariest part of these post-apocalyptic zombie-filled worlds or monster-filled worlds. And that's what I see. We you watched the news, you watch everything, and it's like these horrible people that are out there. And this is like what's the scariest things that are in the world right now. And that's kind of what you guys did with this story, but also had some jabs and some comedy in it and stuff like that. It was really good. It was a very well written story, and it's my favorite out of the book. But like, you guys are on here. So
Thanks, man. Thank you. You have to be willing to poke fun at yourself too. Like, obviously we're taking the piss out of all different kinds of people in this, but like, I'm certainly the guy who talks about my feelings ad nauseum, and I think that's one of our first panel
got it out of the way,
like rip it right off. Like,
and I'm avid in pickleball.
The guy who sits around, like there's just, and I do it, man. If I'm in a fancy restaurant, or not even a fancy restaurant, if I'm somewhere cool and I see that and the food is laid out in a way, I'm like, here I am, like thinking about how do I post a picture of this, as opposed to like, just consume the freaking food, man. Like, just enjoy this moment, be present here. It's gorgeous, and we're lucky because Lucas Kettner, who does Count Crowley, did the cover for the Headless Horseman, and then there's two variants. Mark Spears did a great variant. It's beautiful, totally Mark Spears style. And then of course the legend himself, Double M, super rad. It's surreal. I can't wait to go. Like, we got these in the mail the other day, and like, I'm so excited to go to a shop. I go to a couple different comic shops in California, and I'm psyched for us to go walk into a shop in a week, 2 weeks,
18th.
October 13th, 18th.
Oh, 18th.
So
okay.
a couple weeks.
I got you back here.
I know. Like,
thank you.
But what's the experience like going to be for you, Leah, to go in there and see something like on the shelf and have your story?
I'm going to try not to cry, but we'll see what happens. I just think it's, you've been something you've been in love with for so long, whether that's genre or comic book, or just even that. I mean, like you were talking about, just memories of walking into a comic book shop. Like, even just, I would go in and just sometimes look at the toys, it feels like a safe haven in many ways. And it's such a place with so much creative juices flowing, I feel, because it's artists and writers. And so to go in there and then have something with your name on it is crazy.
It's wild.
It's crazy.
It's wild.
I can only imagine. It's funny that I'm having this like small experience version of it where Mad Cave Studios put out A Legacy of Violence Volume 2, which is from Cullen Bunn and Andrea Moody, and they randomly didn't even tell me, but they put my pull quote on the back of the book for my review of it. And I'm like reading their advanced copy on PDF on my iPad in the middle of the night, and I like I'm like sending my LCS owner like a picture. I'm like, holy smokes, I had no idea. So now I'm gonna go turn every single one of those copies around,
flip it around,
that the back is facing.
I mean, no pressure, Justin, but we're just saying the better the pull quote, the more likelihood there is of landing on the back of a trade at some point.
It's funny because I have had who was it? Image had reached out about one about if you had any, and then Distillery, the new publisher out there. They reached out about putting a quote on their website, but they reached out, like they actually asked, hey, is this, which is fine. I don't like whatever, but it was just kind of funny. I'm like, I would just happen to stumble upon it. And I looked at Volume 1, and I'm like, in the spot where I am is where CBR was last in the issue 1 or Volume 1. So I was like, I replaced CBR. I'm happy with
no big deal. No big deal.
But it was kind of funny. I'm like, it was the same. My day job is a creative director for a brewery, and I do the graphic design and stuff for labels and beer. So I had the same experience when I walked into a store the first time and saw my can of beer on the shelf and my artwork was out there. So it was cool. So I can understand it's a fun experience, and I tried not to cry. Yeah, I'll tell you that, right? So it is a fun experience. And
is it nationally distributed?
It is not. It's mostly in the Northeast, but not. There might be some in New York. We're in New York. There's not in Connecticut.
We're in Connecticut next week.
Not in Connecticut, but it will be in. It should be somewhat in New York, depending on where you are in the city and where we have. It's called Orono Brewing Company.
Okay.
And our beer that would be down there is tubular. It's like tubular. That's our beer that you see. It's in it looks like a can from the Saved by the Bell. Is what the can looks like. So.
I love that.
But yeah, it's a fun experience seeing that out there. But now you guys have written this short story together. Is this something you want to do again in maybe a longer format, or is this something that was like a one and done thing? You guys don't like each other anymore.
We're done. It's over.
I mean, we waited all these years to finally see, and it was, just a nightmare.
You'll see how sales do, right? You'll get the sales numbers back and figure it out.
We'll see how rich we get off of writing a one-shot comic, and that will determine everything.
We can't beat this.
I have launched a production company this year that's called Good Fiend Films. We are telling stories that wrestle with ideas that matter to the creators through the lens of genre, which is mostly focusing on horror and science fiction. And because the creating of this went so well, and because we are so close and creatively in line, we have a number of projects that are at different stages of manifestation. So if you guys love what you see with Horror House, when you're reading through the Headless Horseman and you go, oh man, this one's awesome, just the way good old Justin did, you go, who created that? And it's that Kilpatrick Dastmalchian team. You're like, what else are these guys working on? There's some stuff in the hopper. It's all genre so far.
We'll pull out one rom-com. Just to see how it lands.
Randomly.
Sure.
Just in
Why
the middle.
not? Yeah. Period drama.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Period
exactly.
Drama. And by period drama, we have one period drama.
Commentary.
A lot of good horror ideas going. And with Good Fiend, one of the things that's wonderful is it's this like playground where we can play around with ideas, partner up with different people to see who may be the right fit for helping bring things to life. And it's where, I hope to see Count Crowley come to life in different manifestations. We've got the newest volume of that coming in November. So I'm not sure when this episode of your show is going to drop, but for all of your
October 18th, the day of Headless Horseman.
Oh, the day that we drop this. Great.
So
go pick up Headless Horseman at your LCS, and then make sure to add Count Crowley to your pull list so that you get the new volume, which starts dropping in early November. And
and the trades for the first two volumes trades are available. This should be available, so people should be able to grab those.
They are, and luckily they've been having some places are having a harder time keeping them on the shelves, which makes me very happy.
That's
because
really
that
good.
means I get to make more Count Crowley.
Yes. It's an unbelievable book too. So you grab that. But yeah, this hits. I talked last episode with Ethan Sachs, who wrote a book called The Haunted Girl. But he also rates bounty hunters for Star Wars and stuff like that. But it was also dropped. The episode's going to drop the same day that the comic. I was like, what you need to do is you're listening to this in the morning on the way to work. You need to call your local comic book shop on the way to work and say, can you save me a copy of the Headless Horseman Annual so I can get that when I get out of work or whatever. You need to do that. And then also while you're out there, grab your Count Crowley and stuff like that too. Yeah, right. And all your different pop vinyls out there that are of you.
That's right. And I'm doing, like, it's really fun because we've been on strike as actors and writers from the film and television industry for quite a while now. We've been writing and developing our ideas in the comic space, and just thinking of our general ideas of stories that we just want to tell that are important to us, but also working in like licensing has been really fun for me with Count Crowley, and I hope with other stories and characters that I create, because getting to like work with Immortal Masks, who are doing now masks of the Count Crowley characters, has been a dream. Talking to some other potential collaborators on some really cool things, ancillary products and ways that you can continue the story outside of just the pages of the comic book is like, that's really exciting to me.
It is.
I want a Saturday morning cartoon of something we make. Now that you're saying that,
Crowley would be cool.
Well, I mean, is it any Saturday morning anymore, or is it just a Saturday morning? You can only watch it on Saturday morning
cartoon. But I will say, my kids wake up at 6:59 on Saturday mornings. Now they're not on a timed viewing schedule anymore, which is wild. It's not like, Thundar is going to be on at 8 a.m. But Gargoyles was so good, man. I love
comic book. Comic book's great. It's written by Greg Weisman too, same guy who created Gargoyles. Awesome.
I've got some here. But they go down on Saturday mornings, and they're sitting on that couch waiting for some Captain Crunch. I got to go get some Monster cereal. I can't find it. My Target hasn't been carrying Chocula or Frankenberry or Fruit Brute. Yeah, it's killing me.
Interesting. My son just likes to watch YouTube videos of people driving Matchbox cars into pools.
Yeah.
He's 2 years old. He's just like, he calls it cars and pool. That's what he says. He wants to watch that. It's literally just guys taking like the cars from the movie Cars and running it down a slide into a pool for like an hour. And he's just fascinated with it.
The unboxing, when my son was like 2.5, he was watching the unboxing videos a lot. Just like people opening weird.
I don't know why I'm doing this, or like I just should do that. I'm sure those people are making pretty good money just watching these kids. Which doesn't make any sense to me, because their demographic is 2-year-olds that don't buy anything. So I don't know why they're making money off this advertising when the person who's watching it is likely not going to buy the ads. But
here's my hope for you, Justin. My hope for you with Capes and Tights is that you get the trophy, the YouTube trophy.
Oh, he just learned about this. The plaque. It's a plaque.
It's a plaque.
Yeah, it's a plaque.
Leah hit it this weekend.
What?
Yeah.
When do you get it? Do you get it like
plaques?
Yes. Do you get it in the mail at some point, or do you like?
Well, you have to. They have to send you an email, and it will take a while, because they have to, like, even after you hit a certain number of subscribers, they have to have to see it on their end, and they got a lot of people. And then I think you can apply, and then you get it in the mail. I love trophies.
Do you have to pay for it?
The only reason. What?
Do you have to pay for the trophy, or?
I think you pay for the shipping.
That's wild, though, considering how much you've made them with over 100,000 subscribers or whatever, and then all the millions of views, but you're still going to pay.
But I also am not monetized, so I haven't made any.
You've made nothing.
I just get the plaque. But I like that's I'm a sucker for a medal, a trophy, anything that's like a Halloween costume contest. I get mad if I don't win them. So someone I think just needs to have like a trophy on reserve just to hand me, so I don't have a fit.
It just says you won a trophy. It's all.
Yeah, like you won.
Look, I've got a whole little shelf up there of mine. I love trophies. They're important to me.
Yeah, I'll just take one of those.
Oh, don't you?
That's how it works, right?
No,
right. You just take it. If you possession is 9/10 of the law, so like there you go.
Stolen valor over here.
I know you're on strike, David, with the SAG, right?
Yes.
Still on strike there. Writers have obviously have a tentative agreement, whatever's going on. Can you talk about your project that you had, with the word late in it, or no?
Which
Late Night with the Devil?
Oh yes, Late Night with the Devil is absolutely open for.
Okay, I thought so, but I just didn't know. I wanted to know: are we gonna get? Am I gonna be able to see it at some point
it's
here?
An independent film. It's non-studio, and you will be able to see it next year. Right now, it's doing a film festival tour, so we will be playing. I think the Philadelphia Film Festival soon. Definitely Chicago International Film Festival. I will be attending the screening of the Chicago International Film Festival. I believe that's on October the 15th, Sunday. In Chicago, which is rad because that's where we hail from. So it'll be cool to go back there and celebrate this movie that I love so much, which is set one night. It's the late 70s, late night TV talk show, and we're one episode of Night Owls, which was a 90-minute late night talk show, and the host Jack Delroy, who I'm playing, was just far second place to Johnny Carson in the ratings. In fact, the show is like on the verge of getting the axe probably any day because the ratings keep dropping. And so on Halloween night, Jack decides to try and push the boundaries of good taste, ethics, etc. for entertainment's sake, and trying to get the viewership up. And it works. It's a happy ending story. I want you guys to all watch this. It's like a good old rom-com where a hero who decides to make questionable choices about ethical decisions in a place where horror is real totally comes out looking, great.
Don't believe him.
I'm so proud of this movie, man.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Kevin Smith screened it recently. We had a couple friends to watch it, and he said such a great compliment. He was like, it's like Rosemary's Baby meets Network, and I was thrilled. I sent that to the guys who wrote and directed it, Colin and Cameron Cairns, and they were over the moon. It's really fun movie. I'm very proud of it. And Stephen King, speaking of your neighbor, he got to screen it, and he tweeted something very nice, which I should frame. I should get that like crocheted
That's
or embroider
on one of these.
in like a thing. Yeah. And send that
those.
to the boys. They would probably
That's
love
cute.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should tell them to do this, to say the same thing on another platform so that it does live forever, unlike the one. Likely that at some point.
Well, here's the thing: we screen grab that shit, man.
Okay,
we got it forever.
That's pretty funny. I mean, Kevin Smith and Mark Bernard, and Mark's actually been on the podcast, but they were like hailing this, like Kevin Smith was saying it was one of his favorite things. So I'm like, oh my gosh, now I got to see this movie, and now we can't see it for a year.
And Mark's comic writing is so good, man. I love
talented.
him. And Kevin does a lot of really cool stuff with comics too. Obviously, he's gotten to play with his own IPs, but he's done a lot of cool stuff with DC. I love it. I love it. We just
his comics are at Dark Horse too, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Both of them actually have comics at Dark Horse. So Kevin's awesome. So is Mark. Mark was great. Mark was Mark was recovering from COVID when he came on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
I was like, you gonna be okay? He's like, I got it.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Yes. But it's been, I'm so glad that you two took time out of your day to talk here at the podcast about Headless Horseman. It's coming October 18th to your local comic book shop, as well as Count Crowley. There's 2 volumes already out, one coming in November. All kinds of cool stuff. Looking forward to future stuff, right?
And if you don't mind, I'd love to come back to and talk about I've got a series with Image. Todd McFarlane is helping shape a new book that I created called Knights versus Samurai. And Federico Mele, Fede, as I call him, is just to me like Lucas Kettner, one of these artists that is about to just explode with such a unique voice as an artist and has such a specific style. And we're deep into production on that book right now, and it's so rad. I can't wait for you guys to see that. So
that's
lots
awesome
to come, and all of the collaborations of Dastmalchian and Kilpatrick.
Yeah,
Kilpatrick is what they're calling it.
And I'm hoping you can get back to work acting too at some point here pretty soon.
I think we're like
close. Yeah,
inches away. We're very close.
I can imagine. I'm looking forward to it. Selfishly, all of us viewers at home are like, let's go.
Yeah.
But we're all like, in the same sense, a lot of us agree with everything you guys have stood for and done and fought for. So and selfishly, we're like, okay, at some point we need new stuff. I don't want to I can't watch reruns over and over.
I think the powers that be have felt the pressure, and I think they know the fans out there are angry, and I'm glad that it feels like they're finally listening. And they could have done all this day one, but hey, they
like the drama.
They do. They certainly like the drama.
I just never got it because I feel like none of it ever makes them painted in the good light. It's like I don't understand. Like
when they were posting, when they were doing those publicity quotes from that billionaires retreat that was up in Northern California, everyone was like, "You're so out of touch. It's bizarre. It's wild."
Well, we had a local business here who has he's a restaurant in the area. And he has a place he lives in another country. He does so well that he was posting on Facebook about something about stores fronts being open during the pandemic, but it had it geotagged of him in the other country, like on vacation. And like it was something to talk about people not getting paid or whatever it was, or unemployment or whatever. I'm like, dude, that's so out of touch that like you need to turn your geotagging off so that people don't know.
Man.
Yeah,
people
like you're
tell
in
on
Bermuda
themselves
right now, and like you're on the beach sipping Mai Tais, and you're talking about people not going to be able to work or something like that. I'm like, come on, people, stay in touch here.
He needs more Mai Tais, Justin. He needs more Mai Tais. Yeah. He needs more trips.
Yes, exactly.
Be in Aruba.
Like I said, I loved it. Tyler did a great job on the book. I think it's the partnership. I mean, I would love to see a book between the two of you and Tyler. That would be a dream come true in my opinion. And I would love for it to be at Dark Horse because those Dark Horse people know what they're doing over there as well. So grab Headless Horseman Annual #1 at your local comic book shop, out today, actually, technically, because that's when this episode drops, as well as Count Crowley and all that stuff. And, you have a website, Leah?
Yeah, it's my name. Yeah. Yeah, LeahKilpatrick.com. But good, it's a cute website actually. You should check it out.
I
made it.
Perused it. It was pretty funny.
It's cute, right?
I like your reviews.
It's rad.
What people say about you is like your nephew and your mom. It's great.
Yeah,
people should read those quotes.
I have testimonials too.
But yeah,
good pull quotes.
Yeah, pull quotes from your mom. It's like it sounds like a joke actually. I got pull quotes from your mom. No.
Yeah, right. Yeah, your mom.
But yeah, grab that, and then like I said, sell out of Count Crowley so that David can make more of these, as well as the Headless Horseman. So people at Dark Horse are like, oh, these two should make another comic together. That'd be great. But I really appreciate you two taking out your time of your day talking here at the podcast.
Thanks, man.
And
that was awesome.
Some point you guys come back on.
Love
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Thank
Happy
you.
Halloween.
Thank you.